It's time for the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is the voice of the working class, Rick Smith.
And welcome, brothers, sisters, working class heroes. This is the Rick Smith Show. Thanks so much for being here. Today on the big program, lots to get to, lots to talk about. President Biden came out and had a little discussion about the virus. Some more action from the administration, laid out his plan to expand the number of testing sites, get more access to people to get testing, because this is from the beginning, testing, quarantining, contact tracing, that kind of stuff, kind of making sure that we cut down on the number of outbreaks, social distancing, washing the hands, the masks, and oh, by the way, the vaccines. And this was basically the spiel again. The difference in this little spiel today, 500 million home testing kits are now going to be sent out. And look, I know Jen Psaki was a little snarky not too long ago. What do you want us to do? Send one to everyone's house? Yeah, I actually thought that was a pretty good idea. We should have had one for everyone available. You should be able to just go to the store and just pick them up. They should be in huge truckloads sitting and waiting for people to test, to make sure that when they go out or when they go to functions and they go around grandma, that maybe they're okay. So this is a good thing. 500 million of those tests will be available. Not quite sure yet how we're going to get them distributed, but I'm looking forward to that. He said, look, the obligation to get vaccinated is a patriotic one, and I agree. And he said, look at the last guy, the former guy, your guy, crazy people. He got vaccinated. Follow his, and not only that, got the booster as well. And this is the part that's really kind of hysterical to me, because you look at the fact that most of the anti-vax people, especially the rabid right-wing former guy folk, they're still watching Fox News, who over 90% of the people who work at Fox News, that's right, they're vaccinated. But again, don't let reality get into the alternative reality. No. Got to keep that kind of crazy. And look, the president pointed out, he said, look, we're all tired of this. He goes, I know you're tired. I really mean this. I know you're frustrated. We want this to be over, but also we have more tools than we've had before. We're ready. We're going to get through this. As we head into the holidays, I want us all to keep the faith. And I agree. He said, look, on the school front, we got to keep the schools open. Look to science. This it's clear. They said it's overwhelming. We know how to keep kids safe. K through 12 schools should be open, and I agree with that. He went on to say about the Omicron. He goes, how concerned should you be? He said the answer's straightforward. If you're not fully vaccinated, you have a good reason to be concerned. And that's kind of the right response. It's the response that I expect from Joe Biden. Look, if you're not protecting yourself, duh. Yeah, you should probably be worried. Because, oh, by the way, did anyone mention the first person to die from Omicron happened, I guess, yesterday? Guy in his 50s. A young guy in his early 50s, I guess. First person, somewhere in Texas, Harris County. First person to die from the Omicron, which is supposed to be much less lethal, but we all know the ending to the story. We all know the punchline, right? Wasn't vaccinated. So here again, one of those moments where you go, do I feel sorry for him? No, not even a little bit. Do I feel for his family? A little, because not there, but sad thing. The president went on to say, because Omicron is spread so easily, we'll see some fully vaccinated people get COVID, but in these cases, they are highly unlikely to get serious illnesses. He said vaccinated people who get COVID may get ill, but they're protected from severe illness and death. Now, again, like I said, the unvaccinated folk, you got something to kind of worry about. And there's part of me that goes, it's on you now. Do you? And, at the end of it, if it means we lose some along the way, I don't know. Am I upset and sad about that? Not so much. But on the virus front, feeling a little bit better. They're actually going to get some tests out because I'll tell you, I had a scare not too long ago, just a couple of days ago. I was scrambling to find a rapid test, nowhere to be found. I did find a testing site, took a day to get the results. Fortunately, negative. But I was miserable for a couple of days. It just turns out it was my normal average upper respiratory infection. But here's the thing, had I had it, I would have done the right thing and stayed home and quarantined and not spread it to someone else. Now that I just have what I knew it probably was, just my regular upper respiratory infection, I went about life as normal. And that's how this is supposed to work. So come along with us. So good stuff. My congressman in the news, a guy who usually flies under the radar, Scott Perry, very, very, timid of the spotlight, stays under the radar. There are other crazies out there who are much, more, hey, look at me. I've always viewed Scott Perry as someone who's more dangerous because he's got the military credentials. He was a general. He has, he's a good looking guy, doesn't come off as incredibly crazy until he opens his mouth. And then you get the, oh my gosh, this could turn into fascist down the road bad. Evidently, he's in the news again. And I can't wait for some of it to come out because January 6th was a huge day. Another January 6th criminal rioter was sentenced to 46 months for assaulting a police officer. We saw that coming. A guy's name's Devlin Thompson. He threw a speaker. I guess at a police officer. Missed, hit one of his fellow criminal rioters, injured him. But also, according to reports, he did hit a policeman with a metal baton. That got him 46 months. He pled guilty earlier in the year. But today, Judgment Day. And I still don't think 46 months is enough. The judge, Royce Lamberth, federal district court in Washington, D.C., said that Thompson deserved credit for his early cooperation because evidently singing like a jaybird as soon as he got caught because, hey, got to save my own skin. But the judge couldn't see a justification for going below the sentencing guidelines. And that, the violence that happened on that day with, according to him, such a blatant disregard to the institution. And yeah, that's exactly what they were doing. They were trying to tear it down. Seems pretty simple to me. Now, he's the second January 6th rioter to be sentenced as a felony for assaulting a police officer. You may remember last week, I think it was, you had the guy, Robert Palmer, 63 months for hitting a police officer with a fire extinguisher. Still don't think that was enough. There are still another 140 people like these two dimwits who are facing felony charges, the same charges, and we'll see what they get. But as I said, my congressman, at the heart of this, and this is the part that I have a problem with, he's Mr. Law and Order. Remember, these are the folks who tell you that they're the good, God-fearing Christian folk. They're the law and order. They're we need the 10 Commandments plastered on every wall. And yet when it comes to, I don't know, being that good God-fearing Christian, honest, following the law, not so much. As my congressman, Scott Perry, the Republican from here in central Pennsylvania, has refused to cooperate with the January 6th committee, even though they have asked, hey, we want to know what the communications that you were having. Did you have anything to do with... And this is one of those things where, I tell my kids this all the time. And I say, look, if I'm asking you a question, I already know the answer. I'm just waiting for you to lie. See, this is simple. The FBI does this masterfully. They wouldn't ask you the question if they didn't have the answer, if they didn't already know the direction that you're going. So Scott, if you're listening, they probably already know what's on your signal. And interestingly enough, you used something that was encrypted so no one could see. Kind of makes you wonder, what were you hiding? And again, as a constituent, I want to know these things. I think it's important to know that if my representative was involved in some kind of an attempt to overthrow my government. I think it's extremely important. But again, these are the law and order and the Constitution folks. These are the people who during the Tea Party years were waving those pocket constitutions like they had actually read them. Now, Scott tweeted out today, and did this by Twitter. I guess that's very Republican of him. He said in the first tweet, "I stand with immense respect for our Constitution, the rule of law, and the America I represent who know, the Americans that I represent who know that this entity is illegitimate and not duly constituted under the rules of the U.S. House of Representatives." Yeah, it was. The reason that there aren't Republicans on there is you guys chose not to play. You chose to go, I'm going to take my ball and go home. And there are 2 Republicans on there. Oops, forgot about that one. He goes on to say, "I declined this entity's request and will continue to fight the failures of the radical left who desperately seek distraction from their abject failures of crushing inflation, a humiliating surrender in Afghanistan, and a horrendous crisis that they created at our border." This, for people who have children, is known as deflection. This is when you know one of the children broke the lamp and you ask that child, "Did you break the lamp?" And they go, but the other one did something else. This is known as deflection. Just kind of thrown out there. And I love the 2-year-old kind of, but over there, so that maybe you won't look at them. No, Scott, we're looking at you. Your treason and your culpability in all this will come to light. It has to come to light. And this is the infuriating thing of this, is that they think that they're going to get away with it. And there's supporters that will give them the pass. Even if Scott Perry came out and said, yeah, I did have a hand in getting the new Attorney General put into place. I did have a hand in getting that person put in there, and knew that person would go along with the plan, the PowerPoint. I'm sorry. I don't know that it was really a plan as a PowerPoint. And knowing that this person would go along, their constituents would still, he was fighting for us. The Constitution, never mind that. It's all about power and winning. And the weird thing to me, and I was thinking about this today, how do you have a discussion, a debate? How do you have a conversation with people who are habitual liars, cheaters, and thieves? With people who hold nothing dear but power. Especially when they know that they're liars, cheats, and thieves. And that they believe you're as bad as they are, so that there are no facts, there's no reality, there's nothing sacred, there's nothing other than greed and power and selfishness. The individual, me, I want mine. And no depth of depravity, no insanity, no depths of craziness, no assaults on our institutions will change their minds. This is where we are with the current Republican Party, and they think everyone is as evil and as maniacal as they are in their quest for pure power. And I point to this video. Over the weekend, they had a giant con orgy in Arizona where all of the faithful got together to have their I Hate Joe Biden rally. And one of the Fox people, this Jesse Waters, was talking about Anthony Fauci. And the thing that bothers me is they use this language that it's coded language, but they're saying what they really want to say, only it gives them the out of going, well, I didn't really mean that. And well, I guess I got to just play the clip, because this is the part that's really quite frustrating to me. This is good old Jesse Waters at the Turning Point USA conference.
Now you're going for the kill shot. The kill shot with an ambush, deadly, because he doesn't see it coming. This is when you say, Dr. Fauci, you funded risky research at a sloppy Chinese lab, the same lab that sprung this pandemic on the world. You know why people don't trust you, don't you? Boom! He is dead. He is dead. He's done. Now, how you do that? 30 seconds. That's all you need. 30 seconds. Now, you get that footage to us. You get it to Fox. You get it to Human Events. You get it to Breitbart. You get it to Daily Caller. You get it to the Turning Point pipeline. Imagine Tucker Carlson teases out of the A block, coming up. Brave college student confronts Lord Fauci at dinner. Exclusive footage, right back. Get us that.
Yeah, get them, because that's what they want. They need that. And what's interesting to me is I love how he ties this together, because they're all working together. All of those organizations for one goal. And that's to tear down Dr. Fauci and any response to the virus or any of that. But the part about we're going to go for the kill shot, that's not about, we're going to get a video. He really wants people to be violent. He is encouraging those people who brought Kyle Rittenhouse out and said he was their hero for killing people in the streets. This is all part of the propaganda and the rhetoric that the right has been getting away with for years. And yeah, they want the kill shot. They want violence in the streets. And this is the kind of the problem that we have going on, because there is a party in this country who doesn't care about the rule of law, doesn't care about institutions, doesn't care about this country at all. All they care about is their unadulterated power, themselves. And you've got mouthpieces like that who are going to say and do anything to feed the outrage candy to the masses, in the hopes that some dimwit, some future, Rittenhouse-esque person may do just that and give him his wet dream list. We're in scary times, folks, and these are the people who are taking us down that path. I'd love to hear your thoughts. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. When we come back, to talk to Pennsylvania Attorney General Josh Shapiro about some of the craziness that's going on here in our state and much more. Quick break, right back after this. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.
From the steel mills of Pennsylvania to the auto factories of Michigan, to the modern makers movement, manufacturing makes our nation great. I'm Scott Paul, president of the Alliance for American Manufacturing. We bring business and labor together to advocate for policies that everyone can agree on. Together, we can strengthen manufacturing and create good-paying American jobs. Help us keep it made in America.
It doesn't matter what kind of weather. It doesn't matter what time of day or night. When Mother Nature's done her worst, the only thing that matters to us is keeping the lights on for you. The hardworking women and men of the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, dedicated to keeping the power on in communities all across the country. Because when bad weather strikes, we know what matters most. IBEW, the power professionals.
Welcome back to The Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
Things about to get really interesting here in Pennsylvania. First, we had the reality star Dr. Oz jump into the Senate race. And soon we could have the state senator who was a loud voice at the January 6th insurrection, held that super spreader event at Gettysburg, if you remember that, where they had that, whatever that was, of people with all these allegations and all of these really bizarre claims that nobody bothered to take into a courtroom. And of course, then off to the Trump White House to buddy up there. And now the more we're finding out, I got to start questioning what beyond that. So for him to jump into the governor's race, Wow, it's going to get really entertaining. And it's being reported that Doug Mostriano, the guy who's going to jump into this, is anti-establishment. And I guess if, heading off an insurrection and destroying democracy, I guess if that's anti-establishment, then he's our guy. Anyway, here to share some thoughts on, what we really need to be talking about in 2022 and the kind of governor that we need going forward. I've asked Josh Shapiro to come talk with us. Josh is the current Attorney General here in Pennsylvania, also a candidate for governor in 2022. Josh, thanks for taking time for us.
Hey, Rick, great to be back with you. Thanks for having me.
So, I'm looking at, let's start with Doug Mostriano, because I got to get to this guy. Goes to the January 6th thing, has people go with him, big cheerleader for what was going on, has that bizarre court super spreader event thing that he did. This guy to me is really kind of dangerous in that truth doesn't seem to matter. Reality just doesn't seem to matter.
Well, he is dangerous, and he's also the modern day Republican Party, and he's also by far the leading candidate for governor in a field of, I think last time I checked, about 14 Republican candidates. The polling shows him way ahead. The modern day Republican Party is built on the big lie. It's built on trying to undermine reproductive rights and worker rights and civil rights in this Commonwealth. And there couldn't be more of a clear distinction between me and them. And I think it should be, seared in everyone's mind just how high stakes this next governor's race is here in Pennsylvania.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I had someone interview me not too long ago, and they said, what's your number one issue, in Pennsylvania and across the country? And I said, preserving democracy in society and in the workplace. If we lose the right to vote, if every person doesn't have access to that ballot box, game over. Everything else doesn't matter.
Our democracy is indeed under attack. And Rick, it's been under attack for a couple of years now. It started in early 2020, maybe even a little bit before that, with the lies coming from the former president, then amplified by his enablers. It led to litigation. And by the way, Rick, more than 40 times here in Pennsylvania, they sued us to make it harder for people to vote. By the way, every time they went to court, they lost and we won, and we protected the right to vote here in the Commonwealth. But they didn't stop there. They kept on lying, and that led to the violent insurrection on January 6th that the leading Republican candidate for governor participated in. And then they took their fight from our nation's capital to state capitals across this country to pass voter suppression bills and these sham audits. We saw it in Texas, in Georgia, and but for the veto pen of our governor here in Pennsylvania, those same voter suppression laws would pass here. That is what's going to be on the ballot going forward in 2022. A clear choice between someone like me, who's going to protect every legal eligible voter, and on the other side, folks who want to suppress the vote, make it harder for people to have their voices heard in our democracy. So when you say this is sort of central or the top thing on your mind, I think it is the foundation upon which everything else is addressed, from worker rights to healthcare to how we educate our kids. If we have voter suppression laws in place in Pennsylvania that are removing people from the conversation about our democracy, it makes it harder to come up with solutions that include everyone.
Yeah, but here's the thing, and the reason I point to Mastriano is, they had that thing in Gettysburg where, you had all these people making these fantastical claims. Right. I saw this and this happened, and yet none of them actually took those claims into a court of law. Now you're someone, you've fought every step of the way in this. If this stuff actually happened, and look, I get it every day. Hey, did you see this? Did you see this? Take it into a court of law. That's where you fight this stuff, not in some blog, not some bizarre website. Take it into a court, and that's how I know it's a lie, and that's how I know it's not true, because at least they've got the integrity not to lie in court, I guess, for now.
Some of them do, and you are absolutely right. I mean, look, they put forth these ridiculous, bogus claims that have been refuted. Here's the truth. We had a free and fair, safe and secure election that Joe Biden won by about 80,000 votes. It's also really important to note that there were less than a handful of claims of voter fraud. They were all prosecuted. And Rick, they were all trying to cast an extra vote for Donald Trump, not even for Joe Biden. Even so, it was immaterial to the overall outcome. But You know, it is true that these guys lied in their press releases, but when you show up in a court of law, and we were there over 40 times battling against them and winning every single time, you can't lie in court. And the judges, both Republican and Democrat, pointed out those lies and ruled against them every time. The few lawyers that did go to court, like Rudy Giuliani, and lie in court, well, I held them accountable and got sanctions against them. In the case of Giuliani, got his law license revoked. You're not allowed to go in court and lie. It's a shame that they lie in the press releases and the press conferences. You certainly can't do that in court.
Yeah, good on you. And it's what we've needed in this state. And thank goodness you have been the Attorney General fighting these bogus claims every step of the way. And now, look, I know you're running for governor. This is one of those things where I've said from the beginning, if there is a Republican elected governor in 2022, democracy in this state's over. Immediately, they pass no rights at work. Immediately, all of the Alabama, Texas kind of legislation that has been crippling those states is coming here. And I get from people going, no, Rick, you're hyperbolic. You're going too far. And I don't think so, Josh. I think every bit of that, from passing no rights at work right day one, to the same crazy anti-abortion laws, to the anti-democracy laws, the voter suppression stuff, I think all of it comes on day one. I don't even think there's a debate.
Without question, let's just examine the facts here. Let's take those three examples. First, let's talk about reproductive rights. The Texas law that limits abortion after 6 weeks and actually gives individual citizens the ability to bring lawsuits. The folks running against me have either said they're for it or they've gone a step further and they've sponsored or co-sponsored that legislation. Let's talk about voter suppression. The kinds of laws that have been passed in Texas and in Georgia, these individuals support here in Pennsylvania. But for the veto pen of our governor, they'd be law here. And when it comes to right to work, they've all been firm in their opposition to labor unions and have said that they're for right to work. So this isn't hypothetical. This isn't hyperbolic. This is the reality of who they are. And there is a clear contrast. All of those bad things I just cited, I would veto those bills if they reach my desk. And again, it's not so much an if, but a when, because those bills have been put on Governor Wolf's desk and he's been forced to veto them. We can't lose that veto pen, and we know what we're getting on the other side: undermining worker rights, undermining reproductive rights, and undermining voting rights.
I mean, the hat trick of horrible, to use a hockey analogy. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're here with Pennsylvania Attorney General Josh Shapiro, candidate for 2020 governor's spot here. You can check out his website, joshshapiro.org. Now, as Attorney General, you've been, for workers especially, you've been out there fighting the fight, especially on the wage front, the wage theft front, something that I've been talking about for years. We need to be much more aggressive in holding employers accountable. This is something that you've actually taken and moved forward in a way that I think is really important. And I think people should know, because I don't think it gets reported on enough anywhere.
You know, Rick, back in 2015 and 2016, when I was running for Attorney General, I appeared on your program and I talked about the need to deal with wage theft and worker misclassification. That's where workers are put to work and basically misclassified so that their wages can be taken from them by greedy corporate executives. Well, when I became Attorney General, I fulfilled the commitment I made during the campaign to start a fair labor section in my office so that we could go out and police bad employers and protect workers. And now, 5 years later, let's look at the results. There are CEOs from Pennsylvania who ripped off workers, who are going to jail for ripping off workers because of cases we brought. Let me give you another example. There's a company in central Pennsylvania known as Hawbaker, one of the largest companies in the Commonwealth. Over a 5-year period of time, they did more than $1 billion, that's a B, Rick, more than $1 billion worth of road work in the Commonwealth. And while they were doing that road work, they were required to pay their workers something known as prevailing wage. Well, they didn't pay them their full prevailing wage. Instead, the corporate executives skimmed money off the top and kept it for themselves and took it away from the people who were doing the backbreaking work on Pennsylvania roadways. We looked into it, we investigated, we took criminal action here and filed criminal charges in what became the largest Davis-Bacon prevailing wage theft case in the history of the United States of America. And just last week, actually 2 weeks ago now, Rick, we got every single worker their money back. $21 million was stolen from these workers. We filed these criminal charges against the company, and we got the people their money back. That's the kind of work we're proud of in the AG's office. We got to stand with workers here in this Commonwealth, and I always have.
No, and that's the important part. And you talk about prevailing wage, you talk about the right to join and form unions, something that Republicans, the party as a whole, this is their platform. They are anti-union, they're anti-prevailing wage, they're anti-worker. And they don't seem to have a problem when someone gets ripped off. In fact, you kind of look at the laws and the things that they pursue, it kind of encourages the kind of behavior that we see, which again is another reason why I have no idea how a working person votes for a Republican in this day and age.
I'll just tell you, I mean, part of their playbook is to undermine unions. And I said when I announced my candidacy on the banks of the river in Pittsburgh, I said not only would I continue the work I've done as Attorney General to protect the rights of workers to organize, I want to expand union membership in Pennsylvania, expand the opportunities for all Pennsylvanians to join a union. When we do that, we can lift up wages, we can lift up the kind of benefits people get, and we can create safer environments for people to go to work in. That's what's going to help grow our economy.
And more importantly, and the other side of this as well is the big case that you won, the thousands of workers who are going to get their back pay, that never happens if those workers have a union. They don't get cheated to begin with, so we don't have to go after bad employers. You hold them accountable right from the start, which I think is better for everybody. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show here with Josh Shapiro, Pennsylvania Attorney General, candidate for governor here in 2022. Check out the website, joshshapiro.org. We'll get links out on social media on how you can do that. I wanted to get your thoughts on what's going on. We got this big virus. My favorite saying lately has been, we're going into a viral blizzard. Omicron has taken over all of things right now. We've had our first death. It's going to get worse, and yet at every turn I look at what's going on in my state here in Pennsylvania and across the country, and you've got the Republican Party who's trying to handcuff any opportunity for government to deal with this. As governor, how would you handle this? I mean, I look at Tom Wolf. He did what he had to do. The mask mandate in school seemed to me a no-brainer. Our courts overturned that, and probably rightly so based on the law. But what do you do when you have one party who's hell-bent on, well, death and destruction?
Yeah, the other side really have been obstructionists. And I can't understand that with the amount of death we've seen in this country, over 800,000 Americans dying as a result of this horrible pandemic, that the other side wouldn't want to come together and work in a constructive manner to keep people safe, to do things that don't restrict our freedom, but instead promote science and understanding and help people empower themselves to be healthy. Let me tell you what we've done in the Attorney General's office. And this is, I think, the model for what we need to do across government, across the Commonwealth. I've got about 1,000 employees in my office from all across Pennsylvania, people who come from all different walks of life. And as soon as this pandemic reached the Commonwealth back in March of 2020, we began talking to them regularly, trying to educate them on what this was all about, ways they could stay safe, giving them the tools they needed to be able to run their daily lives, care for their families, do their work, whatever the case may be. And then when the vaccines came out, we brought in medical experts from all different, walks of life to try and educate and empower our workforce to make the decisions they needed to make to keep themselves healthy. I'm really proud of the fact that we have essentially a 100% vaccination rate. We're in the 90s, and the people who haven't been vaccinated yet have appropriate reasons for not doing that. As a result of that, that allowed us to get back in the office before many companies could. It allowed us to continue to meet our mark and meet our mission for the good people of Pennsylvania. Education and empowerment, defeating the lies and the noise that are coming out from the other side, meeting their BS with real facts and real science, and making people and families feel empowered. Look, I want to keep businesses open. I want to keep workers working. I definitely want to keep our schools open. And the way we do that is through education, empowerment, and helping people make smart decisions and smart choices.
Do you see any scenario where we go back to a shutdown? Do you see any scenario where something like that happens?
Look, certainly not on my watch. I can't speak for Governor Wolf. He can only speak for himself. That's not the answer. The answer is getting people vaccinated. The answer is showing up in communities, getting people access to the science and the data that they need to be able to make this smart choice for themselves so that they and their families can be healthy.
I guess the last question I've got for you, because I don't know why you would want to jump into this mess given the craziness that we see at the Capitol and with this General Assembly, because you know from day one that you're going to get no help from the other side. How are you going to deal with the divide that we have? And I guess I ask this all the time, and it's kind of rhetorical. How are you going to deal with that divide that we have in this state, given the fact that the Republicans control the General Assembly?
Look, I'm in this because I believe each and every one of us has a responsibility to get off the sidelines, to get in the game, and to do our part. And right now, the stakes could not be higher. And so I want to be in the arena doing my part to try and better people's lives and protect their interests and their rights, as we talked about here earlier on the program, Rick. Look, I've got a long track record of bringing Republicans and Democrats together to get things done. I've got a long track record of taking on really big fights to help people. Just go ask anybody in Western Pennsylvania, 1.9 million Pennsylvanians to be exact, who are about to lose access to their health care because Highmark and UPMC couldn't get along. We brought those two sides together and preserved and protected people's health care.
Great
so
stuff.
I'm going to bring people together. I'm going to take on these big fights. I'm going to lead the Commonwealth in a direction that lifts everybody up.
Good stuff, Josh. I appreciate the time. I wish you the best. I hope you'll come back and talk to us again real soon.
I sure will, Rick. Thanks so much for having me. Stay safe. Merry Christmas. Happy New Year.
Good stuff. Thanks, Josh Shapiro, Attorney General. Make sure you check out the website, joshshapiro.org. Quick break. Right back after this. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people from the top.
It's the end of a hard year for America. People are tired, worn down, worried. That's the truth. The damage Trump did to our economy, to our families, and our place in the world can't be undone overnight. It takes time. It takes leadership. It takes work. President Joe Biden is doing the work. He's not promising TV miracles. He's delivering results. COVID vaccinations, saving lives, an economy getting back into gear. Facing the tough problems, not with drama, but with competence, decency, hope. It doesn't mean we don't have hard work ahead, but Americans aren't scared of hard work. And neither is Joe Biden.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So, got an email during the break that I wanted to share. Bonnie in St. Paul, listening on KTNF AM 950, the progressive voice of Minnesota, chimes in. She said, I love your parenting practice with your kids. I do the same thing, she said. To reiterate your point, the AP reported, quote, in a letter to Perry on Monday night, Mississippi Representative Benny Thompson, the Democratic chairman of the panel, said the panel had received evidence from multiple witnesses, including then acting Attorney General Jeffrey Rosen and then acting Deputy Attorney General Richard Donahue, that Perry had an important role in the efforts to install Justice Department official Jeffrey Clark as acting Attorney General. She said, you are so right that there is no depth. These people will not stoop. And as I said, look, when I go with my kids, if I ask you a question, I already know the answer. And I said the same thing about Perry. They already know you're just digging deeper, and here's a shovel. Keep going. And here to share some thoughts on, how bad could this be, or how good could it be for democracy to pull this guy out into the light and let people know who I believe he's always been. I've asked Eugene DePasquale to come talk with us. Eugene's a former auditor general here in Pennsylvania, also a state representative. He ran against Perry in the last election and so close. Maybe we can get him to run again this time around. Eugene, thanks for taking time for us.
Rick, always a pleasure. Thanks for having me. It's been a little while, but glad to be back on.
So I'm looking at this, and like I said at the beginning, like any parent, your kids did something wrong. You don't ask a question unless you know the answer. And I think the committee knows or has a pretty good suspicion. Perry doing the thing that the former guy would want him to do.
Let's be very clear about this. They're asking a sitting member of Congress in the club they're all in to basically come testify. That means that they know it's bad, because this is a big step and they know it's bad. And we now know from basic look, I called Scott Perry to congratulate him 2 days after the election when the mail-in votes were making it close, but I just wasn't going to get over the hump. And that Thursday night, when I called him, he was already at a Stop the Steal rally. This thing was set in motion months before the election. He was a key orchestrator. He was in the Oval Office January 5th. He's right in the middle of this thing. He tried to get Jeffrey Clark to take over as Attorney General because he was going to do the bidding of himself and Trump when it came to trying to overthrow the election that Joe Biden clearly won. So he is clearly in the middle of all of this. And now the committee already knows this. They basically want to give him a chance to give some explanations, which I don't think he has the courage to do.
No, I don't think so either. But I loved his explanation. First, he questions the legitimacy of the committee, which since they chose not to participate, that doesn't make it illegitimate. And then the massive deflection of, them, like a child would do when you caught him doing something wrong. They'll go, but the other one did this. That's kind of what I got the whole vibe from this.
It's by the way, it's not just him. It's their whole this extremist caucus that he's now chairing. Some people call it the Freedom Caucus. I call it the Extremist Caucus. All they want to do now in public life is literally attack liberals. That's all they want to do. They don't want to govern. This is all about calling people names, race baiting, trying to overthrow elections because they don't believe in democracy. It never ends with this crowd. And despite the better face he may put on this, as opposed to the crackpots like the guy with the big hair in Florida, Matt Gaetz, and Marjorie Taylor Greene and Boebert, the one that those goofballs, he's just a more polished image of all of them.
Yeah. No, and he's scary. And what's really frightening to me, Eugene, is the fact that Pennsylvania seems to be at the heart of all of this kind of craziness. Where in the past you'd go, well, you've got those extremists, but that's not here. Right now, insanity has taken over our state house and our state senate, and we're exporting it on the national level. That's what's frightening to me.
Look, I think you had Josh Shapiro on right before, and we all hope, I certainly hope that my dear friend Josh Shapiro becomes governor. This Mostriano guy is maybe just a balder-headed version of Perry. I mean, this is, we used to be the state of like the Arlen Specter, John Hines wing of the Republican Party. That's not who's the Republican Party of Pennsylvania anymore. I had my disagreements with Tom Ridge, but he was, in the mainstream of American political thought. That's not their party in Pennsylvania anymore.
He was somewhere near the middle of the road. These folks are extremists, and I look at Perry's treason caucus is what I call it. Right. I think that it's not just about making liberals cry and drinking liberal tears and going after the libtards. I think it's much more nefarious and much more dangerous. I see these people, and I'm going to say it right out, I see these people as fascists who want to destroy democracy, and they want one person rule. And right now it's the former guy, and that's not who we are as a country, and it's not who the Republican Party used to be. That's the part that gets me.
Yeah, and look, obviously, I've had my fair share of reaching out to at least some elements of the Republican Party. You have to, just to see who's going to be part of the coalition of the willing to save our democracy. I'd say it's about 25% of Republicans in our region, and I think even it cuts around across the country this way, that are very disturbed by this. But Trump has taken over a very healthy portion of Republicans, and Scott Perry is right there. I think the guy is I've jokingly said he's Niedermeyer from Animal House, but I mean, this is, when you look at his behavior, he is clearly now utilizing all his skills in life to work with Trump to try to overthrow our democracy.
And now look, I don't want to give Trump too much credit. The Republican Party was marching down they were goose stepping down this direction for a very long time. I actually think Bannon was probably the
the real orchestrator for, and Trump was just the messenger. But I think Bannon was the real strategy guy there.
Right. I think this has been going on for a long time. The moneyed interests of this country have been moving us towards this because they don't want democracy. They don't want labor unions. They don't want women to have choice. They don't want life, liberty, pursuit of happiness for everyone, just themselves. They want, and they'll be honest with you, Eugene, and you know this as well as anyone. They're the original intent crowds. We want
That's
the
right.
blacks back in the fields, the gays in the closets, and women in the kitchen. That's the world that they want us to take us back to.
Scott Perry said point blank, "I don't care about women's health. I already had my kids." That came out of his mouth.
So how do we get you to jump in the middle of this? How do we get you to throw your hat in the ring and take this guy on? Because I don't know there's anyone in this area that's going to be able to do that.
Give me a fair map and we'll get him out of there.
And this is where it comes back to, I hear this across the country. Last night we were talking about, what's going on in Ohio, how Ohio's become a crazy state. And that, if only for Pennsylvania on the abortion front, there's nowhere else for women to go. But if this next election goes to a Republican like Mastriano, that's not even happening.
No, what is going to be at stake, and I know sometimes you keep having these debates, but it's because it's true. The next election, 22 and 24, this is, I think, for all the Marlboros, for our democracy, women's health, rights of the gay and lesbian community. These are all on the ballot in the next two cycles here.
Yeah. Now, there's.
And by the way, if a guy like Mastriano gets in, or even any of these Republicans, I think Pennsylvania, they'll move immediately to make Pennsylvania right to work for less state.
I've said this 2 years ago. They will pass right to work in this state faster than Kentucky, and it'll make Kentucky have whiplash. And
That's
Kentucky
exactly
did a special meeting 9 a.m. on the first day they could to pass it. That's how fast it will happen here.
Mostriano will do it, or any of them. I don't even. Maybe there's an exception, but whoever the exception is probably can't get elected right now on a Republican side. But if Josh isn't the governor, but before the first week of the legislature is out, Pennsylvania will be a right to work state.
Now you've been in politics a long time. I've known you, got to be going on now 15 years.
Absolutely. Yeah.
This is. Can you imagine us in this? When you started, could you imagine being in the position where we're in, where you've got a reality star running for Senate, in Dr. Oz, and a crazy person who was part of trying to overthrow our government, about to run for Senate or for governor? Could you imagine that being reality in this state?
No, and also let this sink in. Like, Scott Perry is the lead Republican right now of national news in the Pennsylvania congressional delegation. And that national news is because he's now known as the orchestrator of trying to overthrow the election. That's the Pennsylvania Republican Party right now.
Yeah, but I look at Mastriano again. I go back to him. He had that super spreader event in Gettysburg where they brought in just the most colorful characters to tell the most fanciful tales of all of this stuff that they knew and they saw, and yet none of those people put their hand on the Bible and said, "I swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth." They didn't bother to go to court with it. It was just all, that kind of show that, it's a reality game.
By the way, this has become the MO right now. In 2011, when we were in the minority, there was a state government hearing where there was this woman that came in to testify that there was a bus full of, she called them illegals, undocumented people, driving all throughout Pennsylvania, voting in all these precincts in Bradford County and Tioga. And I asked a question I thought it was a fair question. I said, I drove from York to Harrisburg to come up for this hearing as a state rep. And it took me an hour and a half because of traffic on 83. You're telling me this bus went all over Pennsylvania, casting all these votes, and they never once got a flat tire, never got stuck in traffic? I can't drive 40 minutes without getting stuck in traffic in Pennsylvania. Nobody noticed that this bus of New Yorkers got off in Towanda and started voting. But the point is, as much as that seemed like fantasy land and it happened, this is their MO now. They can never concede they lost an election.
Yeah. Maybe it was a magic bus.
Maybe.
That's all I can come up with. So the question I have for, someone like you who has been around a long time, How do we pull this back? I mean, I know a lot of people right now are a little despaired, especially what's going on the national level with not getting the Build Back Better plan pushed through, and the infighting that seems to be going there. What's the way forward from somebody who I view as, I've always viewed you as a moderate, level-headed Democrat. How do we pull back to somewhere near sane?
No, I look. First of all, you can't quit, right? You got to stay in the fight. It's tough right now. I was disappointed with what Joe Manchin did. But what you got to do is you got to control what you can control. That was sort of what my college football coach said. Control what you can control. There's things I can control, things I can't control when I was playing football. There's things I can't control in politics, things I can control. What can we control? We got a good candidate for governor. We're going to have a competitive primary for Senate. Once we get a nominee there, let's focus on winning those elections and winning back state legislative, state Senate seats, defeating people like Scott Perry and some of these other wackadoodles that we have, people that are clearly extremists. Let's win these races, the races we can have impact on. And then in our own way, we're going to help preserve our democracy and move our state and country forward. That's how you do it. We can all have our moments where we're belly aching, and I've had my moments of howling the moon too. Believe me, I lost to Scott Perry. You think there aren't nights that I'm howling at the moon? But at the end of the day, you got to dust yourself off and get back in the fight.
Yeah. Now, is it worth the time to try and reach out to Republicans in this moment? Because I hear people saying all the time, there've got to be some sane Republicans left. And I go, I don't know that to be true, because I look at the last election where, Joe Biden got, more votes, but Republicans got more votes too. Right. And in record numbers on both sides. So that tells me that we're pretty well split down the middle.
Yeah. Oh, look, I think that Pennsylvania itself, we are very much split. And I think there's pretty big chunks of the state that are split too. I think you do have to try to do both. I do think we have to do a better job of reaching out to our core bases and do a better job on turnout. One thing it certainly impacted my race is the Republicans were much better at voter turnout. They kept registering voters. We stopped going door to door. That was a mistake. There were some precincts that Republicans turned out at 90%. We were in the mid 60s in some areas, which historically isn't bad, but we've got to do better on that. And then we do have to find, so while we're doing that, look, there are some Republicans out there. It is not obviously a majority of them, but there are some that are concerned about what is happening with our democracy. We've got to communicate with them and try to convince them to be part of this coalition.
Yeah, I mean, it's scary times. And ultimately, voting rights to me, as I said earlier, someone asked me what I think the most important thing is. And right now, voting rights more than anything, because we've seen in states across this country, Republicans where they have control, they have put up all kinds of barriers to stop people from being able to vote. And Pennsylvania would be right in line with that, with a Republican General Assembly and a Republican governor. So this could be the last free and fair election we get. So go vote.
So, and I'm maybe this is my wish list here. I would get rid of the filibuster and make the Voting Rights Act the first thing I would do. Because is Build Back Better important? Yes, absolutely. But if we don't have a democracy, that's not going to matter as much. So the Voting Rights Act would be the first order of business if I were king for a day.
No, it has to be. And look, the filibuster is something I've been screaming about for years, that I think it goes away, because I've always said the Senate is the place where good ideas go to die, where any progress for the working class of this country goes to die, because, well, they're easier to control.
Look, I would be, and this is a day that can't happen, I would be okay with they used it if it was the idea of, we're going to use it just to make sure the minority has a chance to have a say on things, to review the bills. So you're not jamming everything through in 24 hours. But it's basically making sure that you have to have a super majority of senators to support something, which means literally nothing can happen anymore. That is not how we're supposed to be running our country.
No, I've said from the beginning, bring Mr. Smith back, put him in Washington. I'm all in favor of a talking filibuster. If it's that important, everything stops. Get your water bottle, get your whatever, and tell me why you're against the minimum wage increase. Tell me why you're against children getting the $250 a month that has cut childhood poverty in half in this country. Tell me why you're against those things, and maybe we can have a debate and actually do this the way it's supposed to be done.
Yeah, you're right. If someone got up there and they were willing to stand for 24 hours and talk about their concerns with a bill, hey, Okay, more power to them. May disagree, but at least they've got the right to do that. That is something that, again, it doesn't happen that often, but does it? But the system we have today is just totally broken.
So I'm gonna make one more plea. Got to get you running. The website still active, EugeneForCongress.com. That's still something that
that is still active. And then at DPasquale DPasquale PA is my Twitter handle.
And we'll make sure we get links out on social media. Folks can kind of nudge you in that direction, because I think in this moment, with Perry where he's at, we need somebody out there presenting the right side. Eugene, always great talking with you. I hope you'll come back and share some more thoughts with us down the road.
You got it, Rick. Thanks so much. Have a great holiday season, and see you in the new year, my friend.
Good stuff. Thank you so much, Eugene DePasquale. Again, like he said, EugeneForCongress.com, the website. Check that out. Also follow him on Twitter, DePasquale PA. We'll get links out. You can take a look at it. Love to hear your thoughts. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Quick break right back after this. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk.